All right, so I had a chance late last week to have Dan Quinn on my podcast. I wanted to play it back for you guys today. This is how it started. All right, it's my pleasure to welcome back to the show Washington's head coach, Dan Quinn. Coach, thanks so much for doing this. Really appreciate it. By the way, full disclosure, we are recording this pretty early. It is 5:30 in the morning. That's early for a lot of you out there, but I would guess that this is not very early for you, right?
Well, Kevin, it's good to be on with you, man. Welcome to the life of a coach. So glad to be on with you and talk some Commanders football and getting ready, man.
You just said welcome to the life of a coach. You know, I think I may have mentioned this to you last year, or you mentioned it when I asked you about it. You've lived in like a dozen or so places over 30 years, right?
Correct.
Is there a moment, or has there ever been a moment that you just weren't sure about the lifestyle?
Oh, man, no. Honestly, I don't think I've ever really been asked that. But it is. It's way more than a job. So I would say it's definitely a lifestyle. And sometimes I think in lots of professions, takes what it takes. And so some of the early hours are really good that you get some time before the players are there, because they get there early and they stay late. But during that time, we're doing the teaching and the interacting. So the times before they get there and the times after they leave is our best prep time for them.
All right, let's talk some football. When you get asked by someone who's close to you in your life, so Dan, what's the team look like this year? What's your answer?
I would say this is a really tough and competitive crew. And I thought that going into camp, and then now as the roster trims down, there were some real position battles, Kev, that we thought would be that way. There's some positions that were deep. And so to see the offensive lines, the defensive lines, all the padded work that we needed to get our line of scrimmages right, we thought that would be an important part of our camp this year, and it certainly was.
Was there a player that surprised you, during camp in a positive way, meaning you didn't know what to expect or you didn't have the highest of expectations, but he really blew you and the other coaches away?
Well, the first part I would say is it's not with expectations or that, but getting to see the new players. So you're on, for instance, like on offense, you're getting to see Tunsil, you're getting to see Connerly, you're getting to see, Bebo, you're getting to see guys who, your first look at them, first on practice, how they're interacting. That's J.K. Kinlaw and Wise and Trey Amos. So those would have been ones that, I see that happening. There's a whole nother subset, I would say, Kev, of guys who are like making the leap. And I would say Quan Martin is one for me that I have already had high expectations for him. But then to see the type of camp that he had, the work that he's put in, I feel like he's one player that I think is really about to go big.
I think I asked you this one of the times I had you on last year. How much do you really know about your team before the real games begin? We all as NFL fans know the league changes so much year to year. Hell, it's really a week-to-week league in so many ways. How much can you really know about your team until the real games begin?
Well, you definitely have to go, through, some weeks. You want to make sure identity, that part is right, Kev. Like, we want to make sure, like, for you and all of our friends and fans that watch us play, like, man, these guys absolutely bring it, how hard they play. And so you have to go show that. You've got to go demonstrate that. I've seen the way they practice, but it does take, a few weeks for that identity to, come into shape and to show it. It's not something, that you could just say, man, you gotta see it. You gotta demonstrate it. And so that does take place through the first, quarter of the season or so. But they've got to put the work in to put themselves in a space to do that. But that would be one thing, the team's identity, man. You've got to have that every single time you go. This is how we get down. And if you can demonstrate that over and over again, then I think you got a real shot to play well.
Yeah, that's something that you've talked about since the moment you got hired. The other thing you talked about actually before last season was, we don't use the word rebuild. We use the word recalibrate. Be honest, did you have any clue this time last year that recalibration meant 12 wins, 2 road playoff wins, and 60 minutes from the Super Bowl?
No, I wasn't probably allowing myself to go that far out. I was just trying to throw, an identity to make sure that part would be right. But I think that does go back to that, Kev. Like, we don't place one opponent above another, man. Like, we want to make sure, like, every time we go, they get it all. And that's kind of the byproduct of doing it that way. So, no, at that time, that recalibration wasn't there. I knew that we had competitive guys. I knew our team had connected, but it probably didn't become the team we were going to be. May have come after we lost 3 in a row, which in the NFL, man, that is hard. And so we became tougher, a little more resilient. On the other side of that, I wish we didn't have to go through that. But as a team, sometimes you do have to go through the tougher moments to really test yourself, see what your resolve is all about. And when you come out the other side of it, there is a toughness and a hardness that you can appreciate. And those are things that matter, because you find out when it gets real hot, who's down for it.
Looking back, and we've looked back a lot on last season because, easily it was the most exciting season we've had around here in 3+ decades. That 3-game losing skid, which started with that Pittsburgh loss at home that was, about a half inch away from a first down and nearly field goal range at the end.
Yeah.
And then, 4 nights later in Philadelphia, quick turnaround. And then, the incredible throw to Terry against the Cowboys, but the missed extra point. How much of that stretch was about Jayden's health?
Once he gets where got back into his flow and into his rhythm, that was good. But you're right. That's kind of the life in the NFL, where Pittsburgh game could have gone the other way. The Dallas game could have gone the other way, but it didn't. And I wish, like I said, we didn't have to go through those, but we did. But, as far as like his health, like he was ready to go and ready to go battle for it. So it was just us not nailing some opportunities. Like, for instance, you're talking about the extra point or not executing like we need to at the end. And we're going to work really hard to make sure those moments, man, we're all about that.
He said earlier this summer, or not that long ago, he was part of an event, I think, with Saquon Barkley and maybe Jamar Chase, I think. He said that his rib was broken in that Carolina game. Was he playing with broken ribs?
He did have a rib injury, yes.
Is that all I'm going to get out of you about that? Because
I think that's all you're going to get today, Kev. Yeah, but I think what it speaks to is, like, whatever the injury, like, this is a tough competitor, man, and that's like things that you don't know during scouting and during the process. And all of a sudden you say, man, like, this guy's really going to put in whatever it takes to go play. And it's one of the many things that he and his teammates and myself, why we respect him so much. He's tough, but it's all the unseen work that he puts in to get ready, to go play. We talked about Cliff, arriving early. Jayden's not far behind in terms of the time he gets here to really nail it for him and for his teammates.
I was going through the list of the quarterbacks that I think you have been with on teams that you've been a coach. And the list is actually really impressive. I mean, it's Matt Ryan, Dak Prescott, Russell Wilson, Jeff Garcia, I think, when you were in San Francisco. Brett Favre, I think you were with the Jets when Favre was there for that 1 year. Am I right about that?
That is correct. You're correct.
Matt Hasselbeck. I mean, that's a decent list. I might be missing one or two. Was that the list?
That's excellent. Yes.
How does Jayden's potential, his upside, compare to some of those guys?
What I've learned, man, like, I don't compare Jayden to anybody. And here's why. Like, he just constantly is pushing it to go to the next space. But what I can tell you is that, man, does he put the work in to put himself in a spot to play really well. And he's so unique in what he does. He can use his legs. He can get outside the pocket. So he plays in a different style, but he's still effective. He's keep growing, and you'll see an improved version of Jayden in 2025. So this is not a player that sat back, and said, okay, I did well. It was just the opposite of him going for it again. His accuracy in training camp has been so on point. His footwork that he wanted to improve upon. So, yeah, that's a good thing. This guy, his ceiling, and he's still going for it. And I'm pretty pumped to see where it takes us.
You just mentioned, footwork. What did he specifically need to improve on heading into this offseason? And it sounds like you feel like he has.
It has. There are specific throws where, for instance, like a deep throw to the left but not overstriding. So it may seem small to us or to a listener, but those are the kind of details. If you're really wanting to, find the edges, like, he's going to find them. And so that's an example of what he was going through and how to do it. It wasn't a motion shift. So often, with quarterbacks, all the power and the strength is, coming from their legs. And so to have that part right was a big deal that he wanted to work on hard, and he definitely has. So I really respect that about him. Like, he is a guy, like I said, man, that is just always ready to put it in to improve. And when you're already a good player, sometimes that's hard to make it to the next ceiling when there's this big gap, like we're talking about maybe some of the guys going from year 1 to year 2, where these big leaps and bounds normally take. When you're already hitting at a high level, you have to be really detailed about the things you need to do to take it to the next one. And he's willing to do that.
I was thinking about something, especially since you are a defensive coach. There's this thing where people say, well, an off season of preparing for Jayden, defensive coordinators, have had a whole off season to figure out how to defend this guy. Is that a real thing, off seasons, to come up with ways to stop a talent like Jayden Daniels?
I think it's hard because we also added other weapons around him too. So there's things that we have done in 2024. Now we've added some things, some ways we want to play, some different concepts. So I get the narrative, but it's much easier said than done to say, okay, in this game against this coverage, it might have not gone so well. Well, do you even play that coverage? And so those are the things, that you better, look long and hard about how you want to go and what you want to do to play, because he also put in the work. So it's a narrative. I don't know if it's as popular or as prevalent as some people think it is. So that's how I think of that.
Interesting. Did you go through the exercise for the benefit of Cliff and the offensive coaches of saying, this is what I would do to adjust to him? Or did you basically just give me the answer that it's really difficult and it's not necessarily, the inside narrative?
We definitely did for the entire offense, to say more specific than just, more broad than just Jayden on the first part, to say, kind of like an audit that you would do, to say what went really good, what needs to change, what do we want to adjust, kind of what we need to take out that we were practicing but wasn't as effective. So you do that part first to say, let's make sure these things that we're doing are really highlighted. And then, yes, as a coach that can look at it from a different lens, it may not be coverage related. It may be, a certain pressure, a certain look that you want to find to say, is this something that you would try against him? And so that's really, through the spring, you want to sprinkle in some of those to say, this is what I think people may try to do, and then approach it that way.
Do you agree with the following statement that the defense has to be better or it will be really hard to duplicate what you did last year?
Agreed. I think anytime you want to go compete for a championship, all three phases, man, you've got to be on it. I love the way last year we covered kicks. I love the way that, in the passing game, Joe and the guys had, real resolve in how it was done. But there are definitely areas that you're going to see improvement from the defense. And that's a really important part of it. So just like a turnover margin is to winning, that's the offense taking care of the ball, and it's also the defense creating takeaways. So those are just a few of the things for us to play our best. We'll need to be our entire team hitting the mark.
So it sounds like you've got confidence that the defense will be improved in 2025.
I do. But like most things, man, you've got to go show it and demonstrate it. Tackling, creating takeaways, creating the havoc up front. Those are the ways to play, good defense, Kev. As in this game where people are trying to create space, you better be a good tackling team because that'll eliminate a lot of the big plays. And the second piece is, man, we've got to do a better job of creating takeaways, forcing fumbles that get recovered, the interceptions. If we do that part right, we'll definitely improve defensively.
All right, two more, and I appreciate the time. You usually don't hear coaches talk about chasing down one team, but I'm curious as to how much of the offseason plan inside the building was about closing the gap on one team, that one team being the Eagles.
Yeah, they had a fantastic team and a fantastic year. And so during the regular season, we split the games with them. In the postseason, they absolutely got the best of us. Kind of referring to what I was saying earlier about the margins of winning. For them to get takeaways and for us to not to get any, that was the deciding factor, in the game.
Yep.
Where we didn't give ourselves our best shot. But at the end of it, and like you also give credit to them, we don't spend our time, looking at too many of the other opponents, but we do look at ourselves really, really closely. What do we need to do? Where do we need to get better? And if we can dig in on those first, that's a big deal. But you start by looking defensively, explosive plays, who attacked you, how did it happen, and the same thing offensively, what were the most effective things? How do we feature the players in those roles? Because, Kev, honestly, it's trying to put the players in the right spot. It's not just the playbook. It's the playbook and then featuring the players in their correct roles.
Yeah, I've heard you emphasize that a lot since the day you arrived, that it's, not just the player, the athlete, the competitor, but it's, incumbent upon the coaches to put those players in the right spots. So I'll finish up with this. The expectations heading into this season, Dan, are by far the highest they have been in at least 25 years. 2000 was a year in which they were coming off a division title, a playoff win. It was that first, Dan Snyder off-season fantasy football frenzy of signing Deion Sanders and Bruce Smith and Jeff George and Mark Carrier, and the expectations were super high, but they have not been anywhere near that. In fact, the opposite of that for the last quarter century until this upcoming season. The expectations are through the roof. The anticipation for this season is super high. Do you feel that? And is there any extra?
That's awesome.
Do you feel it? And is there any, added pressure because of it?
I feel like, man, the intensity and the excitement for it, of course. And, I would absolutely not want it any other way. This is why we do it, to go battle and compete for it. But we really do a good job, Kevin, of staying grounded, of staying present. We just don't look too far down the line. We don't see that being an advantage for us. I would hope that when we talk, you and I, in a few months, team then can really kick the hell out of the team, that's here today. So that's what I look for, to see how good we can get.
Thanks for doing this, Dan. Really appreciate it. Best of luck this year.
Yeah, you got it, man. And good to be on with you and talk some ball, and look forward to our next one, man.
Dan Quinn, everybody, joined me late last week. Appreciate that. Off of that, this is the most excited you've been about a season since, and fill in the blank. Since which season? Since when? I think there's a lot of different answers to this. This is not this is the most expectations, the most excited you've been about a season since. I think some of you will say 2012, maybe 2013. Maybe the first one without Snyder, 2023. Maybe we've got to go back, or 2024. The first 2023, the first one without Snyder. Maybe you go back to Gibbs, 2004. Maybe 2000, which was a lot of excitement in the off season. This is the most excited for a season you've been since. And tell me since